Frontier just released a new development blog post covering off the internal specifications and features and release date of the new Caspian Explorer from Zorgon Peterson. The first details around the coming changes to on-foot combat and NPC behaviour, and hints around the current ongoing story in HIP 87621. In this video we're breaking down everything we just learnt. The new Frontier Developments blog is sprinkled with screenshots detailing the features they're discussing. We'll dot them through this video so that you can see them if you haven't already, and it opens by talking about the fourth and final new vessel to enter the game this year, the Zorgon Peterson Caspian Explorer. And I can now reveal that the clearly Star Trek inspired large ship will be making its debut into ARC's early access next Tuesday, the 2nd of December. Frontier have released the full internal specifications of the ship minus the utility slots, and those specs are as follows. For the hardpoints, the ship features 1 large hardpoint and 6 medium hardpoints. For its core internals, the Caspian will be fielding a size 8 power plant, size 7 thrusters, a size 8 FSD, a size 5 life support, a size 7 power distributor, size 8 sensors and a size 7 fuel tank. For optional internals, it's bringing 3 size 1s, 1 size 2, 1 size 3, 2 size 4s, 4 size 5s, 2 size 6s and 1 size 7. In their original announcement for the vessel, Frontier around a month ago mentioned that their second large class vessel for the year would be sporting a new Mark II frameshift drive unit as well as some other Mark II modules. Frontier has given no new details about the Mark II FSD over and above what they've said already. The unit will jump further when supercharged from a white dwarf or neutron star over and above what is already possible with a Mark I FSD. So at this stage we've no idea of the multiplier involved. Suffice to say, a size 8 FSD supercharged in a ship optimised to jump range is going to push you a significant distance. You may remember they also made particular mention of the patterning on the hull of the ship and that they would be talking about it more as they got closer to release. That patterning on the hull, which appears as a hexagonal texture, looks to be a feature of the ship's new Mark II hull armour which, to quote Frontier directly, quote, allows for steeper, faster gliding and seamless orbital approaches, end quote. Quite what that equates to in gameplay terms is unclear, as FDEV haven't been specific about it, but our best guess, taking their wording quite literally, would seem to suggest that the Caspian will perhaps be able to enter the D-orbit glide at much steeper approach angles and possibly higher speeds than the current crop of ships. If this is indeed the case, it would seem to play into Frontier's current apparent philosophy with Elite that centres around smoothing out a few of the game's more challenging friction points. Those issues which, to perhaps newer players in particular, might get in the way of reaching the more immediately fun aspects of the title. Supercruise overcharge is perhaps the most obvious example of this friction smoothing philosophy, a feature which, I confess, I now loathe flying without. And it's once you reach a planetary surface that the next of the Caspian's new modules kicks in, as it features new Mark II thrusters, Frontier's blog saying that they'll reduce the impact of gravity. Again, FDEV haven't been specific about what this equates to in game, but we're assuming that, quite simply, the ship is better able to keep itself out of the dirt when manoeuvring in a gravity well compared to its counterparts. It's worth mentioning that Frontier has offered up this kind of flavour text in the past, but it didn't ultimately equate to anything significantly noticeable in the game itself. I'm referencing specifically the Mandalay Explorer, where they said that, quote, the ship's handling in atmospheric conditions is exceptional, easing the travel down to undiscovered worlds, end quote. The difference with the Caspian is, however, that what could be argued as similarly flavoured text is being directly attached to Mark II modules that must, presumably, be Mark II for a reason, over and above it just sounding cool. None of that is of course unwelcome, particularly in a large exploration ship, but it seems that the Caspian has other strings to its bow, as the Frontier blog also says that the ship's internal layout supports long range trading and mining, with its 7 hardpoints seemingly putting it in a position where it can take a swipe at any potential attackers as well. Overall, we're kind of thinking here that, perhaps surprisingly, the Caspian, rather than being a dedicated exploration vessel we were expecting, might actually be somewhat of a replacer conda for the game, the SCO next generation option for everyone's favourite venerable door wedge. Either way, we're looking forward to getting our hands on the Caspian to test this stuff out when it launches into early access next week. Following on from the Caspian then, the blog moves into territory that for many will be very welcome indeed, and I think a solid argument could absolutely be made for very long overdue. Frontier's incoming efforts to rebalance the on-foot weapons and combat. The on-foot portion of the Caspian update was originally pitched as some improvements to NPC behaviour, but reading the blog released today reveals that it's clearly very much more than that. On the NPC front, FDEV are saying that the AI will now be smarter, making better decisions about their positioning during combat and when to take cover. They've also promised that enemy AI will not only move with a greater sense of urgency, but will also advance more aggressively in order to flush players out from positions of cover. But, as we've mentioned, the update doesn't stop at NPC behaviour. From the December 2nd update, all weapons will have faster stow and draw times. Plasma weapons will have increased projectile velocity, and lasers will do more damage to health than before, and, by the same token, kinetic weapons will do more damage to personal shields than before. We reached out to Frontier for some clarity on these changes, and they told us that the reality is that after the update, shields will have a reduced resistance to kinetic damage and less vulnerability to laser damage, and armour will have a reduced resistance to laser damage and less vulnerability to kinetic damage. They further clarified, saying the effectiveness gap between lasers versus shields and kinetic versus armour has been narrowed, allowing for more flexible weapon choices without heavily penalising mismatched loadouts. My very dirty and completely unrefined takeaway from this is that you should be able to go into an appropriately levelled conflict environment carrying, broadly speaking, whatever you fancy, and be assured that you will do damage and have a fighting chance, whether your preference is laser, kinetics, plasma, or a well placed rocket propelled grenade just behind the left ear hole. These changes are almost certainly part of the run up to the deployment of the new operations gameplay early next year, but as overall changes to the on-foot experience, I have to say I'm very pleased by what I'm hearing. The necessity to constantly switch weapons to optimise damage types is not a gameplay wrinkle that I particularly enjoy, and if these changes mean that I'm required to do that less, or better still, not at all, then I'm all in. The speed of plasma projectiles is a particular bugbear of mine, to the degree that I largely don't use plasma at all. In fact, ironically, the exception to that preference being the Executioner sniper rifle, which is actually my favourite weapon, but that has a lot more to do with my enjoyment of sniping and a lot less to do with launching a very large, slow moving, brightly lit beach ball in order to achieve it. Any increase in the projectile speed there would be welcome indeed, although it does stop short of putting a rifled railgun in my low down camping hands and then letting me go fully prone on a roof, or better yet mountain. Please Frontier, let me go prone with a railgun. Select weapons in the past have also had their ammunition, magazine capacity and damage values adjusted to align with the changes. FDEV haven't yet been specific about what exactly those changes equate to. It feels like this is perhaps a further step in the direction of smoothing out some points of friction, again particularly for newer players keen to get in on some on-foot gameplay. Hopefully, following this update, the NPCs will feel a lot less bullet spongy and that all important time to kill will get a bit tighter. Overall, I'm fascinated to see what dynamism these tweaks will bring to surface conflict zones and in particular settlement raiding, and how this will all ultimately tie into operations next year. Particularly as Frontier finish the section around on-foot gameplay by stating that they have a long-term plan to bring on-foot and space gameplay together to create, in their words, quote, a more cohesive experience for commanders on all fronts, end quote. I'm not convinced that what Frontier is referencing here is anything much beyond operations, but we don't yet know for sure either way. In any regard, getting closer to the triangle of combat that Frontier promised back in the Odyssey pre-launch era, that's on foot, SRV and Starship all interacting in the same battle space, has to be a good thing. The blog goes on to talk about the current ongoing community goal centred around HIP 87621. It doesn't give any new information in that regard, but it does underline the key points that the slightly protracted storyline has plotted out so far. That's to say, the October Consortium has been hiding their discovery in the system for decades. The plants there contain some kind of biological compound that it's believed may have pharmaceutical applications, and in order to secure their piece of the big pharma pie, the galaxy's powers have moved in, surrounding the system with a light years wide enclave of their own defence and scientific research establishments. The update on 87621 finishes by directly stating that there are just 2 days left of the biosampling community goal that has attracted over 25,000 commanders, and that the scene is now set, again in Frontier's words, for quote, something much bigger, end quote. As to what that something much bigger is, we have no clues to even speculate on at this time. We'd love to hear what you think might be coming, so let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Frontier also goes on to say that they're hard at work on new content and features, and that they'll come back with a developer video in February next year which will detail what's to come. This has been the pattern since the start of 2024 at the very least. FDev are quiet in January and then a big announcement arrives in February. We're hoping to see and hear a lot more about operations at that point, and also one of FDev's now customary roadmaps for what the community can expect from the year ahead. For us, this update has delivered some real surprises, whilst also calming a lot of the speculation around the Caspian and its secret features. We'll have to see ultimately how it handles, but right now we're definitely getting super but slightly less bitey Conda vibes from the Caspian. It's now confirmed there is something way bigger than some weird blue trees still to come from the events around HIP 87621, and I'm really pleased by the changes to on-foot gameplay, and they very much have me cautiously optimistic. Finally, after 4.5 years, Odyssey on-foot gameplay is getting not only some new content in the shape of operations early next year, but a seriously overdue balance pass next week and, dare I say, surface level rethink around its playability and accessibility. I sincerely hope FDev keep putting their best space leg forward and continue to build on what should be, in my honest opinion, a much more significant feature of the greater Elite Dangerous experience. Odyssey, after years of being an awkward cousin, is absolutely back in the room, and its interoperability with the rest of Elite is now being addressed by FDev as part of a quote long-term plan, end quote. And Frontier will be back with a video update in February. What would you like to see happen in HIP 87621? Will you be grabbing a Caspian Explorer in ARC's early access? And what else would you like to see Frontier tackle with on-foot gameplay? Let us know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to the channel so that you see all our videos and community posts, and if you'd like to support our work here at the Burr Pit, you can also join us on Patreon. Links to that and everything else we've talked about in this video you'll find linked below. That's it for now. Thanks very much for watching. We very much look forward to seeing you next time.